podcast is brought to you by Aetna. Learn how Aetna is working to build a healthier world by visiting aetnastory.com.
Hi, it's Doro, and I'm so excited to announce that the Achieving Optimal Health Conference is just around the corner on October 26th at Georgetown University. For our Health Gig listeners, we have a special offer. If you sign up by September 20th, you'll get $50 off your ticket. Just go to achievingoptimalhealthconference.com and use the code HealthGig. Get ready to create a happier and healthier life story.
People are yearning for information. Having the opportunity to encourage people and to educate people and inspire people.
It's amazing to be able to say we'll carve out time to take care of ourselves.
There's something for everyone.
Welcome to the BB&R Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Riley Cook.
And I'm your host, Dora Bush Cook.
Thank you for listening. We are so excited that we get to do this podcast and help people learn how to take better care of themselves by interviewing thought leaders and experts in health and wellness about their personal health journeys.
Today we are ecstatic because we're talking to Washington Redskins quarterback Kirk Cousins.
We are extreme Redskins fans here, so it was so exciting for us to have the opportunity to spend time with Kirk. We were really impressed with his power of focusing and staying in the present moment as a way to make the most of every second.
It's really another way of doing and embodying what we always talk about, which is mindfulness. We hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did with Kirk Cousins, and we'll check back with you at the end of the conversation. So we are so excited today to welcome to our podcast, Health Gig, Kirk Cousins. And Kirk, Tricia, and I are huge fans of yours, and our families are extreme Redskins fans. But as you know, this podcast focuses on talking to people about achieving their own optimal health, mind, body, and spirit. And we know that's critically important in your life. But before we get started, we just have one thing to say. You like that? Sorry, we couldn't.
Yeah, that's become my tagline, and
Hysterical.
I'm not going to escape it anytime soon.
Well, how many times do people yell that at you a day?
It's fun. It's better than hearing other things.
That's true.
If I'm walking through the shopping mall, if people don't feel like coming up to me and saying hello or asking for a picture as I pass by, they may, if they recognize me, they may yell, "You like that," as a way of feeling like they got my attention. So that's always funny.
Connected with you. Well, thanks for letting us do that.
Yeah, thanks. So anyway, we wanted to start to talk to you a little bit about sort of preparation in your life.
Yeah. And when we were studying, we were seeing how you really take care of yourself. Is it true that you sleep in a hyperbaric chamber?
I try to when I can. I own one, and I'm not in there every night, but to have it work, you've got to be in there for a few hours. So I usually just try to combine that with the time that I'm sleeping, and I found it to be helpful. I think it has a lot of long-term benefits that I may not see right now, but down the road I will. And I find it to be a good tool, one that's pretty easy to use and should make a difference.
Yeah. Is Julie in there too, or just you?
Everybody uses it. Julie isn't in there with me. I mean, it's big enough for about 1.5 people, so it's a little tight for both of us. But it's a great tool. She loves using it as well, and it's nice because anybody can use it. So other people who have any health issues, we have them come over and get in. And even one time we had a friend's pet who had an injury, and they were so crazy about their pet, they wanted their pet to go in there, and we said, yeah, no problem. So they had a dog go in there as well. So it's multi-purpose, that's for sure.
What happens when you go in one? What do you hope happens?
So the idea is that the air pressure inside is going to be stronger than in the atmosphere we're normally in. So, and the idea is that the increased pressure promotes greater blood flow, promotes greater healing, and most research centers around being in there for 90 minutes to 2 hours, and that's where the real benefits are. But it doesn't hurt you to be in longer. So if I am going to sleep in it, I'll get in, around 9 or 10 o'clock when I go to bed, and probably be in there for about half the night till like 1 or 2 a.m. and then get out and go upstairs and sleep the rest of the night in my own bed. But really, I think it's that increased pressure, and then other people, I don't do it, but other people will add oxygen to be pumped into the chamber as well, so then you get the benefit of the increased oxygen as well.
Wow, that's fascinating.
So tell us about your morning routine. I know you're in the off season now, but tell us what it's like during the season and then in the off season.
Well, yeah, obviously very different. But during the season, I am a man of routine. I've read up on a lot of the great athletes, and one of the consistent themes with these great athletes is their routines, and that they stick to a routine, and that enables them to play at a high level and kind of be able to relax their mind. So I've developed a routine of trying to be very regimented throughout the week, and thankfully the NFL schedule keeps us pretty consistent with Sunday to Sunday games and staying in that routine in terms of what a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday look like. So Monday's my off day, and I take that rest, and that may involve sleeping in a little bit longer and just being able to relax, walk the dog, spend time with my wife. But Tuesday through Saturday is our work week, and then Sunday's our game. And so I get up in the morning, around 6:15, and then I like to always spend some time at my desk in the morning, reading, praying, just kind of, not jumping right into the day, but having a chance to kind of just have some quiet time and be with myself for a bit. And I think that's a great way for me to start the day. And then I head into work, closer to 7, and then from there just go into the football routine all the way through the day.
Wow. So that time in the morning is your time, basically, right? And that's when you sort of get your head straight, because you've been under so much, right? I mean, one thing we wanted to talk to you about is how do you do it and keep your mind on the game when so much is going on around you?
Well, for me, I do find playing quarterback at the professional level to be extremely challenging, probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it doesn't help that players like Tom Brady make it look so easy. Yeah. The expectation from the fan base is that I better be like Tom Brady or I'm not good enough. And so that's, the competition and what you're being evaluated against, and that's certainly a high standard and hard to achieve, but that's where we're all striving to be. And, it just requires a great deal of preparation and really an understanding that you have to treat it like a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, 5-6 years ago when I entered the NFL, I was clueless. I wasn't ready to play at a high level, and I knew that. And it wasn't going to suddenly be something where I could snap my fingers and suddenly be at the level I needed to be. It was going to take years, and it probably took 3-4 years to get to a place where I even felt like I belonged. And then from there, had to continue to fine-tune to get to a place where I could play at a very high level. So, I'm through 6 seasons now, and I feel like just now I'm starting to come into my own in this league and really take ownership. And so it is a long process, and I think that's the patience and the understanding that gradual accumulation of knowledge and ability is a very powerful thing. But unfortunately, it is gradual, and you have to just keep plugging away and keep chopping, believing that if you do that, over time, good things will happen.
That's really good.
You mentioned your faith, and in the morning you have prayer time, and does that involve a devotional, or is it how? Yeah, what is your prayer life like?
Yeah, in the morning, that's, they say, people say, carve out a time in the day to just spend time with the Lord and have that prayer time. And some people do it before bed. I just find that as the day goes on, I get more fatigued, and so I'm going to be best off doing that in the morning when there's less distractions, when the house is quiet, and I feel like it's a great way to springboard into the day, to feel like you've had that time and you're kind of prepared for what the day is going to throw at you. So it's first thing for me. I try to get up when the house is as quiet as possible, when my wife isn't up, when the baby isn't up, there's no distractions. And I think it's a combination of reading the Bible. I do believe that's the best book there is to read. And so you got to be in it every single day. And so it may not be a lot of reading, but just to know that I was in it today, that I read something, gained something, and that's really where I focus. And I usually do accompany the Bible reading with another book, and that might be a pastor or a teacher that is having a commentary on the Bible, so I can gain some of their insight as well. a pastor who I've really enjoyed reading his books is Charles Stanley, who pastors a church in Atlanta. I'll often read a book of his that accompanies my scripture reading, and then finish with just some prayer time, which actually I type out my prayers on my laptop rather than just say them. I like to just kind of have it documented. So it's almost like a journal, and I'm doing journaling, but it just happens to be that instead of my journaling talking to myself like a diary, I'm really talking to God, and that's how I do it, and it's worked for me. And again, I think it's the routine that's important for me, is to get in a habit of doing it, so that every single day I just wake up and do it without even thinking. And then you look back over months of a season and realize, you have a document of your prayers typed out that's 80, 90 pages long because of how many days you were consistent in doing it.
I love that.
In doing all this, what have you learned that surprises you most about yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd have to think a little longer to give you a great answer.
You
but
can think about that one.
I do think that, first of all, routine is so important, because when I first thought, okay, I'm going to do this quiet time, I'm going to have this rhythm, I was hit or miss, and a month would go past, and I'd look back, and I'd say, I wasn't disciplined enough. Why did I let distractions get in my way? And so it is a journey of just getting to a place where you're disciplined enough and routine enough to do it, and to make no excuses, and to make sure you carve out the time. And I think in order to do that, you have to really believe that it's going to help you. And so I think what I learned about myself is the benefit that it brings, and that, again, it's a gradual benefit. You don't do it one morning for 20, 30 minutes and then leave saying, that changed my entire day. But you do it for a month or two, and you can look back and say, I just feel like I'm in a healthy place. I feel like my relationship with my wife, the way I'm leading at work, is all healthy, and it's good. And I believe a lot of that I can attribute back to that time I'm spending every morning. So sometimes there's things in your life that are hard to see the direct fruit or the direct results, but I do believe that in being committed and disciplined in those areas, it makes a difference in some of the things that happen later in life, and some of the things that didn't happen, if you will. To avoid the catastrophe, you have to do some of these things in advance to protect yourself.
So true.
So true. So, speaking of routines and preparation, your preparation methods are legendary to DC fans. And so I read that you block your calendar into 15-minute activities. Is that true?
I do. I did. And it all started back in 2015. I was coming off of a 2014 season that did not go well. I didn't play well. It was my first year of marriage with my wife, Julie, and she, too, just watched me for the first time, just coming apart at the seams and not doing very well with the season and the demands of life. And so she came to me before the 2015 season and said, something's got to change. I think you need to block out your schedule a little better so that you're better making use of your time. And really, it started with, let's block out when we're going to rest. When are we going to take time off and get away from football? Because if we don't block that out, next thing you know, it's a 24/7 deal for 6 months, and it's going to consume us. And that's what she noticed in the first year of marriage. So we sat down, we blocked out times, and then that led us to then block out the entire week to say, okay, if we're going to be resting here on Monday or on Friday evening, then I got to make sure I get my work in the other times of the week to be settled and ready to go for Sunday's game. And so, it kind of snowballed into suddenly, let's just get out a spreadsheet and let's just block these increments out into 15 minutes at a time and go from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and kind of just block it out. And that way I'll have a peace of mind each stage I'm at during the week to know that I'm right where I need to be. I don't need to be anywhere else. I can be fully present in where I am and maximize this hour at this time, and know that if I do that, that gives me the best chance to be successful on Sunday at 1 o'clock at FedEx Field for the Redskins. So we did that for the first time in 2015, and we found it to be a great thing for us. It was healthy for our marriage. It was healthy for my work. I had one of the best seasons I've ever had. And from there, we just said, let's do it again. And so in the 2016 season, we did it as well. And to my detriment, I didn't do a good enough job of carrying that over into the off season. It was almost like work, being that it's a part of the year, really demands my focus. And then the minute I can get away from that, I kind of go to the other extreme, and I'm more unorganized and less scheduled. And I think that hurt me. And so this year we said, hey, let's carry these same habits over into the off season as well. And so we blocked off days where, we're going to take more rest and we're not going to travel and we're going to make sure that we're home with family. And then other days, be okay with going on trips or taking on opportunities or being on a podcast such as this one, because that's a day where we've said, good opportunities come our way, let's take advantage of them. So it's just been a process of learning what works for us, and I think it started with having a wife that was smart enough to realize something and point it out. And when you really talk about marriage being a partnership, that's where you see the benefits of having a wife who can help you see things that maybe for me were blind spots.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's pretty cool that you have met someone who is aware and open and right there with you.
So,
and that's what it should be. I think that's been the fun for us, is that while I'm the one on the field playing every Sunday and taking the hits and doing a lot of the tangible work to be ready for Sunday, I mean, we are a team, and she feels that way. And right now, as we're talking, she's making me lunch, making a salad, and she's being disciplined, making that food, stuff that I don't want to eat it, but it's healthy and good for me, and she knows that, and so she's helping any way she can. So it's just, teamwork, and it's Valentine's Day today, and so today is a great day for me to, also express to her how much I appreciate her and the benefit she is to both of us. So
that is just,
it's a cool partnership. I certainly would recommend marriage to anybody who's interested.
That's so sweet.
Great.
When you were talking about staying in the present, being right there, we talk a lot about that with mindfulness, right? And through prayer, staying here in the moment. So thank you for sharing that. And this practice that you do and these routines that you've created is exactly what we teach about mindfulness, staying in the moment. It's a practice, being aware of where you are now. And one thing that we do, Kirk, and I don't know if you do this, but the idea of like feeling your feet on the ground, or when you're about ready to throw a pass, do you feel your body, or where's your head when that's happening?
Yeah, I think one of the things I continue to work on and see the benefit of is being present, and like you just said, being focused right here, right now. This is the only moment I can live in that I can take full advantage of, so why be anywhere else? And I'm at my best self when I'm just fully present, and yet we so easily can get away from being present, and my default is to be somewhere else and to be thinking ahead or 3 moves ahead when it does me no good to be there, and actually detracts from the current moment. And the habit that I've tried to employ in order to help myself remain present is to just close my eyes and refocus on my breathing, and to just take deep breaths and have a rhythm to it, and to close my eyes, and just throughout the day, periodically, if I'm reminded of it, to just for 30 seconds just breathe with my eyes closed. And I found that enables me to kind of recenter things and just be a little more present, and then from there, enter into the next activity.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Really incredible.
Kirk, what's the best advice you've received from a teammate or coach or anyone in your life?
That's a great question as well. I'm always looking for counsel, probably to a fault. I'm always looking for other people's thoughts on how to do something, maybe even to the point where I have to acknowledge that, look, there's multiple ways to do this, and you got to find what's best for you. But I just remember, showing up as a young player in the NFL, and the transformation had happened really without anyone making the point of it, but that you go from high school and college, where sports are very important and you're playing at a high level, but it's still not your job. It's not a profession. At the NFL level, it is now your job. It's a profession, and you need to treat it as such. And I remember showing up one day pretty early. I wasn't the earliest guy in the building by any means, but it was a quiet locker room at that time, and I looked across the way at an offensive lineman who was a few years ahead of me in the NFL, and he was there much earlier than me. I could tell by how far along he was in his activities, and I said, boy, Sean, you're here early. And he looked at me and he just said 4 words. He said, not a hobby, man, not a hobby. And it hit me that, you're right. So many of us play this game, and because it's called a game, and because we grew up watching it on the couch, we think that, and because we say we're living a dream, we think that this can just be a hobby for us. We can just kind of show up, and we'll always just be talented enough, and we'll be able to just do it. And he made the point that, at this level, this isn't a hobby. If you want a hobby, go learn to fish or go get into something else. But this is a job, and you got to treat it as such, and it's competitive. And if you don't want to show up early, and if you don't want to be detailed, and if you're too cool to take notes, you're going to find yourself, NFL is going to stand for not for long, and you're going to be gone. So I just have always thought about that. Whenever the job gets tough, or I start to have the poor me's, I'll say, hey, not a hobby. If you want a hobby, go do something else. But right now, this is your job, and you need to treat it as such and expect it as such. And I think that would be my message to any young players who enter this league, is to say, if it ever was a hobby for you, it's not a hobby anymore. And if you want to succeed, you can't treat this as a hobby. You got to treat it like a job. So that was good advice for me professionally, to just be able to approach this game the way I need to have success.
Yeah. Well, again, it kind of goes back to mindfulness too. You're in the moment. It's your job. You're doing it. And what do you, how have you prepared for that moment? It's all kind of
That's right.
Incredible. And you mentioned earlier that being a quarterback is a really high standard. How do you balance that role as quarterback with your role as a teammate?
Well, I've always said, people talk about at the end of your career, what do you want? What's your goal for the end of it all when you walk away from football? And certainly we all want a Super Bowl ring, but it is a team game. And, some of my worst games that I've played individually, we've still won, because it's a team game, and coaches and other players bail you out, and we find a way to win. Sometimes my best games have been in a loss where, we came up short in other areas, and even though I did all I could, we fell short. So you learn quickly that, Super Bowl rings and, statistics and a lot of the accolades that we all kind of work towards, yes, a lot of it's in our control, but a lot of it isn't in our control. And so I'm not going to make my whole life and my entire professional career about things that I can't fully control. But what I can control is the way I treat people, the way I lead, the way I bounce back from adversity, and all of that is being observed every single moment by your teammates and by your coworkers, and they know the real person. You can put on a front in interviews, you can put on a front out on the field to fans, but behind the scenes, in the locker room, in meetings, every single day on the practice field, teammates get to know the real you. Mm-hmm. And so my goal would be, when I'm done playing, really above and beyond the rest, is that teammates would say, the Kirk Cousins that you interviewed on a podcast, or the Kirk Cousins that you met in a short window of time, he's the real deal. And he's the same guy that you talked to as we saw for 5 or 6 seasons in a locker room behind the scenes. And that guy walks the walk. He doesn't just talk the talk. And I think that's the goal for my career, is that you'd have the respect and admiration of teammates long after you're done playing. And if you have a bunch of Super Bowl rings but didn't accomplish that, that would be pretty empty for me, at least. I think it would be a shame. So fortunately, I can control that part of my job, and that'll be most important to me. But it wouldn't hurt to get a ring or two on the way there.
Right. Like, that'd be okay. That would be okay.
Based on that, what do people get wrong about you?
What do people get wrong about me? Well, because I can be, like you said, a bit of a preparation freak, and because I do enjoy reading, and I enjoy, gathering research and being prepared and covering my bases, because I'm in a world where a lot of athletes don't operate that way, it can catch people off guard, and they'll say, "Oh, he's a nerd," or "He's a dork," or "He's kind of odd." And I just don't find that to be the case. I think that if you were in the professional world, you'd say, "Well, sure, you act that way. I mean, that's the way you act." But I think because so many athletes just rely on their natural athleticism, it's sort of not expected out of the professional athlete world, even though in any other professional world, you would need to operate that way in order to be successful. So absolutely. I would say I'm probably less of a nerd than people paint me out to be, but because of the nature of what I do, maybe I don't have quite as much of the cool factor as those around me.
Well, I think it's cool that you sing in a band.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nerds, I grew up, my mom put us in some different, musical theater when we were young, and the choir teacher at our high school was a very, very good leader. And somehow, some way, he was such a good leader that he was able to kind of make singing and dancing, if you will, cool for a high school student, and for me, a high school jock. It was rare to see in a high school, but when you have a great leader, it makes a difference. So my high school choir teacher really got me into singing, and my mom had kind of raised me in that world. And so got pretty comfortable with it, enjoyed it, had fun. It was like being on another sports team. And then from there, just kind of found a love for music and for musical theater. And to this day, I love to, go to musicals wherever I am and see the new shows. And,
Have you seen Hamilton?
I haven't seen Hamilton, but I've listened to the whole soundtrack. And actually, during the season, my brother and my sister went. I got them tickets, but I couldn't make it because of the football schedule. But they loved it. And I just saw the Greatest Showman with Hugh Jackman in the theaters, which is a great musical. And just enjoy all that. And, obviously in the football world, I'm not around it quite as much anymore. But I have a high school friend who now lives in Nashville and is a part of a band. And every off season, I'll go down to Nashville and visit them just to catch up. And part of the deal is they take me into their recording studio and we get to just sing a little bit, kind of have fun, and almost like you'd have a Redskins fan come to practice one day and get to throw a pass and just kind of fulfill a dream. It's kind of like that for me. I go over there and get to hang out with the band and pretend for a day that I'm one of them. So that's kind of my experience there.
Have you ever written a song or not? No, you're not.
No, I was just reading up on the two guys who wrote all the music for Greatest Showman, and I found myself watching videos on the internet of them, composing and playing the piano and kind of bouncing ideas back and forth and writing these songs. And I thought, they say how every musician wants to be an athlete and every athlete wants to be a musician, but I really sat there saying, man, even cooler than being an NFL quarterback would be if I could write songs like that. I mean, I just feel like what a gift to be able to create those songs, those hits out of nothing.
Out of nothing.
Thin air, you're creating something. I mean, what a cool gift that so few people could do. At least do it consistently. So that would be a dream of mine, but I think that ship has sailed.
I don't think so, because I think you can do it. And after, hopefully you'll have a long football career, but after that, I mean, presidents become artists.
There you have it.
So,
we just interviewed President Bush, Dora's brother.
Yeah.
And did you know? Yeah. And he's like an accomplished painter now. Did you know that?
Yeah, and I had no idea until that all came out in the last year. I had no idea that he had that ability.
Yeah, so you too
can be a singer. I know it.
Well, the benefit of being a professional athlete is you tend to get to retire at an early age.
Right.
So
that should open up some free time in my 40s and 50s to develop a new skill or work on a new talent. So maybe I'll start by enrolling in some piano lessons when I retire and see where it takes me from there.
Yes.
So you've been a dog dad for a few years. Is that right? And you're an animal lover? Tell us about your animals.
Right. So my wife fostered dogs in college, and when we were dating, she made it clear that if we get married, that's just a part of the deal, is that she wants to have a dog around and would like to foster dogs. And I, being someone who grew up with dogs and loved dogs, that was no problem at all. So right away when we got married, she started fostering dogs one at a time, and once they found a home, then she'd get another one. And we just loved having these dogs around. And I think it got out in the media that we do that, and that was kind of a fun thing because people love that. They shared their stories of fostering as well, and a lot of people said that they heard about my wife fostering, and then they ended up looking into it and got one as well. And so we had fun for a while, but none of the dogs we fostered, stole our hearts to the point where we couldn't part with them and we had to keep them. While it was tough to watch them go and find a new home, we're comfortable moving on to the next one. And then we got I believe it was our 8th dog, Bentley, who was a golden doodle who was coming from an organization called Doodle Rescue that focuses specifically on doodles. And we fostered him. We had him for like 4 or 5 days, and we just said, there's no way we can let this guy go. He's just too sweet, too special. So we adopted him right then and there. We've had him now for a couple of years, and he's just the best. So we've put Bentley on our social media quite a bit, and he's a fun dog. We love him. Now we're talking about, we have the baby now as well, but we're talking about maybe we want to get a second dog too, especially if we can find one as good as Bentley.
Well, so the baby.
Yeah, tell us about the baby.
Tell us about Cooper and what's it like.
Yeah, we have a 4-month-old who is growing fast, and Julie has just done a tremendous job all the way through the pregnancy to the delivery till now. But what was unique about our situation was Julie chose to do an all-natural delivery, so no drugs.
Incredible.
She just went through the labor as you would, 1,000 years ago. So she she handled it really well, but it was a unique experience because not many people do that anymore. And so the labor, especially for your first child, was much longer than you would typically have in the hospital. It was about 30 hours. And yet, Cooper was born fully healthy and everything went really well, and Julie recovered quickly. And the delivery happened only 3 days before our game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. So it was challenging for me because I missed one day of work being with her. The baby was delivered that night and then went back to work the following day, and then we flew to Kansas City the day after that. And we didn't win the game, but played well and felt prepared. So it all worked out, and it's just been so fun to watch Cooper grow, and I've learned that you have to enjoy each stage for what it is because they grow.
It's almost like you're 15.
Blank, they're totally different, so I just try to enjoy each stage for what it is.
That's true. It's like your 15-minute breakdown,
That's right.
That is how it goes, and that's how quickly it happens.
Exactly.
What's changed now that you're a father is in terms of your outlook on life and...
Yeah. Well, I think I manage my time probably even better just because I want to be home and spend time with Cooper, and I know he has an early bedtime, so when I'm at work, I want to be efficient and get my work done so I can get home and spend time with him before he goes to bed. And I also, after a tough loss, I'm down in the dumps, and you come home and you realize your son doesn't care. He doesn't know any different.
Right.
And he's not gonna love you any less or any more based on what you do. So, that puts things in perspective. And then if you play really well and you think you're the man, you come home and you have a diaper to change and you have throw up to clean up. And that's a part of being a dad too. So it just adds a level of enrichment and fulfillment to your life. And you just pray so hard that he'll grow up healthy and grow to be the kind of man and person that you would aspire for him to be.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Well, Kirk, we're down to our last minutes.
I know we don't want to hang up with you.
I know, but we know you
have to have lunch.
You have to have lunch, and we have our rapid fire questions. So let's just do that real quick, and we'll start with, what book do you think everyone should read?
Well, obviously I'm going to say the Bible is my first choice, but in addition to the Bible, I read a book called Winning by Jack Welch that really changed my entire perspective on leadership, on management, and principles I'd never been taught came through in that book. So I would recommend Winning by Jack Welch to get some new look ideas on how to lead and manage other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what quote brings you strength and peace?
I built my life on a verse that my dad taught me when I was young, Proverbs 3:5 and 6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your steps." And I feel that my life has really proven that quote to be true, and it's really become what I would call my life verse. So that's the quote that comes to mind first when anybody asks me for something that has had a big impact on me.
Right. And what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Well, looking back now, I think at 20 years old, I was very much, talk about not being present. I was very much always wondering, where's life going to go and what's going to happen? And is a decision that I make today going to dramatically send me off course or affect my life? Almost to a point where it was a worry that was persisting in my spirit. And I would look back now and tell my 20-year-old self, don't worry, it's all going to work out. Just keep working hard, focus on the here and now, and understand it's all going to work out. And you don't need to know anything else. Just know that it's all going to work out. And I think that would have given me a peace that would help me just to continue to keep going.
So true. What's your favorite meal? Other than the one Julie's fixing for you right now.
Well, what I've come to learn is that there's such a thing as eating stuff you like that's still healthy, and so when you're done eating it, you feel really good. And then there's eating stuff you love, but it's not very good for you, so when you're done eating, you feel awful. And so because I want to feel good after I eat it too, I'd say my favorite is to have a nice filet steak, cooked medium, with some vegetables like asparagus and some sweet potatoes. And that's about all I need, and I'll be feeling pretty good afterwards. And something great to eat. But I'm also a sucker for chocolate cake and ice cream, you name it.
If you could sit next to anyone at dinner tonight, who would that be?
You know, when I get that question about who do you have dinner with, you know, the obvious names come to the surface. You know, Jesus of Nazareth or Martin Luther King or Abraham Lincoln. But for the sake of being a little different, I would say, you know, also on the list, maybe down the list a little bit behind them, would be a guy named Billy Payne, who I've been watching the Olympics lately, and you know, I've been spending a lot of my off season in Atlanta. My wife's from Atlanta, and Billy Payne is the man who's credited with bringing the Olympics to Atlanta back in '96, and how he had the vision to do that in the late '80s, and then spent the next several years getting it to happen. And you know, I was just watching the Winter Olympics and thought, man, the thought of bringing the Olympics to Atlanta back when he had that idea had to be just out of left field to the people he told it to, and just they must have thought there's no way he's going to be able to do that, and yet he made it happen. And so I would love to just sit with him and just pick his brain and say, how did you do it? What were the keys? You know, how did you turn a vision into a reality? And I think I'd have a lot of fun talking to Billy Payne. So he'd be someone else on my long list of people I'd love to sit with and learn from.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, Kirk, you are a good soul.
You are.
We are honored to be speaking to you today, and give our love to Julie.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
You are
for
so
taking
incredibly
the time.
inspirational.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege, and thank you so much for what your family has meant to our country and to our world, and the impact you've had for generations.
Thank you.
You know, it's an incredible legacy, and it's an honor to speak to you and engage with you, and wish you also the success going forward.
Thank you so much.
Kind. Thank you for joining us on Health Gig. We loved having you with us. We hope you'll tune in again next week. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and follow us on healthgigpod.com. I'm Trisha.
And I'm Doro.
Be well.